Hey, what is going on, guys? This is Jake at That Fit Friend, and today I'm reviewing the Do-Win Weightlifting Shoes. So 3 things to like about this model is number 1, I could see this being a very good weightlifting shoe for folks who are getting into weightlifting shoes. So if you don't feel like dropping something like $200 for like a Reebok Legacy lifter or a Nike Ramalios, this is an awesome option to explore, and it comes in at a price at $95 USD. And that's honestly why I've liked most Do-Win weightlifting shoes over the last few years. They're always one of like those safe models to recommend for recreational lifters and beginners who don't feel like dropping a ton of money. With this model, you get a nice TPU heel, you get a nice level of stability, full rubber outsole. So for the price point, they do a really good job. And honestly, if you are somebody who is a little bit more recreational with your training, or if you just want to start experimenting with weightlifting shoes, this is a great model to invest in because they'll last you a while and you're not going to break the bank doing so. The second pro that I have with this model is that overall the foot security that you get with this shoe is pretty dang good. So you have a synthetic leather upper here with some mesh overlays. You have a dual strap system with a decent lacing system as well. So when it comes to foot security, this model I think does a pretty good job for a variety of foot anatomies. So for example, if you need more room in the upper but you still like having a secure fit, it's super easy to adjust these straps to lock the foot down. And if you have like, let's say, a narrow foot, you can pull these straps pretty dang tight and they're not going to have overhang onto the floor, which is awesome from a foot security standpoint. So I do enjoy the strap system and the lacing system in this model. The third pro that I have with this shoe is that the TPU heel and the rubber outsole I think do a really good job for a variety of lifting contexts. So once this shoe breaks in and once this rubber starts gripping more, you're going to get a nice level of grip on machines, wooden platforms, rubber gym floors, whatever you're choosing to use this shoe for, you should have a nice level of tread, so you're not gonna have issues with slip at all with the shoe. So for example, if you're only using it for weightlifting on wooden platforms or for just squats on rubber gym floors, you're not gonna have slip issues with the shoe. And this TPU heel and this like midfoot wedge right here are really stable, so you're not gonna have issues with compression whatsoever, even if you are training super heavy. But that being said, let's talk about a couple of cons I have with this model. So 3 cons that I have with the Do-Win weightlifting shoes is number 1, I feel like Rogue is off with the sizing for this shoe. So if you look at this product page for this model, they have like an important notice for size down a half size in the shoe compared to your normal shoe size. I think that's actually outdated, and I think most lifters and athletes are going to want to go true to size in this model, and if you have a wider foot, go up a half size. When I first put the shoe on, I actually thought it was a little bit snug, and I went true to size in this model, but after doing more research into this shoe and prior iterations, it almost seems like this model's last has changed a little bit, and it is a bit more snug, because I remember my Do-Wins also running a little bit long from 5 years ago, and with a wider toe box. This model fits a little bit more neutral in nature through the toe box and midfoot, and it doesn't have as much spaciousness in the toe. So the need to size down a half size, I feel like was for a prior iteration. In the latest Do-Win weightlifting shoes, I think going true to size is going to be the move for most lifters and athletes. The second con that I have with this shoe is that it can run a little bit warm, especially in hotter gyms or for longer sessions. So with the synthetic leather overlays here, you don't get a ton of breathability, and if you're wearing thicker socks and if you are in a hotter gym, expect your feet to run a little bit warm in this shoe. It is a little bit heavier in nature in regard to the materials and how much they breathe. They do stretch over time, so you do get a nice level of give with them, but that doesn't improve their overall breathability. So keep that in mind with this model. And then my third con with this shoe is super niche, and maybe this is just me, but I feel like the insole construction on this model is pretty meh. So with the insole here, there are 2 little things that I'm not really the biggest fan of. Number 1, the material is already starting to fray and like kind of like get all scuffed up, and it's changing after every single session. So I'm curious how this insole lasts over longer periods of time. And then number 2, the insole is like a little bit slick. So I like the midfoot security in this model, and thank goodness it does have good security, because I almost noticed like the insole in this shoe when first breaking them in was a little slippery, so I had to really crank those straps down to create a nice stable posture. And now with that insole though, that's now changing with its texture, it is starting to grip more, so maybe that's actually a good thing. But the insole in this model is interesting. It's not going to be a make or break for performance. I don't think a lot of folks are really going to have a gripe with it, but I think with testing so many different weightlifting shoes, it was something in this model that I was like, that's interesting. Why does this feel like that? With that all being said, let's dive into the performance of the Do-Win weightlifting shoes. To discuss the performance of the Do-Win weightlifting shoes, I'm going to break this section into 3 different parts. I'll talk about the performance for squats, weightlifting, and then accessory exercises where you want a heel wedge. So when it comes to squats, overall, I've really enjoyed this shoe, and that's for 3 key reasons. Number one, I like the level of stability you get in this shoe. So if you are new to weightlifting shoes and you've never worn a weightlifting shoe in the first place, I think this is a great model due to its TPU heel and its firm rubber outsole. You're gonna get a nice level of stability in the shoe. So for high bar squats, low bar squats, whatever you wanna be using the shoe for, I don't think compression issues are gonna be an issue whatsoever in this model. The second reason why I like this model for squats is the midfoot security, and I mentioned this in my pros, but with the dual straps and with the lacing system, this model is super easy to really get snug on the foot based on your foot anatomy. So I do like this feature of the shoe, and the straps are nice because you have a nice long runway of Velcro, so you can pretty much have them as tight or as loose as you want, and you're not going to really lose out on stability as long as it is matching your overall needs with the shoe and your squats. The third reason why I like this model for squats is the effective heel height of 0.75 inches. So I think that is a good heel height for a lot of lifters who want this model primarily for squats. Now, obviously there are nuances between different heel heights, and I've discussed that in a video, check that out up there. But if you are very recreational in nature and you just want a shoe for squats, 0.75 inches as an effective heel height is usually a really good middle ground for what you're going to need. When it comes to weightlifting, I like this shoe again for the same reason as the squats. The security is great, the stability is good, and this rubber outsole, once it breaks in, it actually grips really well on different surfaces. Two little issues that I did have with this model for weightlifting is that number one, the insole, when breaking the shoe in, again, it was a little bit slick, and maybe this is just my own interpretations of this model, but I was noticing I was sliding around a little bit, so I did have to crank this lower strap a little bit tighter to help me from like sliding laterally or into this end of the toe box when doing things like cleans. So just something to think about with the shoe, you might just have to crank it down a little bit tighter when breaking the shoe in. Once that insole gets a little bit more scuffed up and pliable, you should have better grip in the shoe. The second little issue that I have with this model is just the overall breathability of this shoe. So if you are doing a longer weightlifting session and you are in a gym that's maybe a little bit smaller in size and it runs a little bit warmer, this shoe is not going to be the most breathable. So your sock choice might be a little bit more important with the shoe when it comes to keeping the foot relatively cool for a longer weightlifting session. For accessory exercises, the shoe did a pretty good job. It does take a little bit to break in this toe box, but once it breaks in, it does have a little bit more maneuverability. It's less stiff than other weightlifting shoes. So if you are doing like quad bias walking lunges in this model, or if you're doing any form of machine work with the shoe, so a quad bias leg press, hack squat, etc., this shoe should be a pretty good bet for you. And honestly, for the price point, I do feel like this is a good model for some more recreational lifting and accessory exercises in addition to squats and weightlifting. Overall though, the Do-Win weightlifting shoes have been a pretty stellar model for their price point. So when covering the price of the Do-Win weightlifting shoes, they come in at 105 USD. However, they are often priced at 95 on Rogue's site. So if you can get them for less than 100, they are a very strong shoe. And if you compare it to other budget-friendly weightlifting shoes, honestly, the construction of this shoe is pretty strong. They are pretty dang durable, so they should last you a while, especially if you take good care of them and you're only using them recreationally. So for the price point, I do like this model's overall construction and performance. All right, so now it's answer the question, who should invest in the Do-Win weightlifting shoes? So honestly, I feel like this model is a good shoe for a lot of lifters and athletes, especially those who are either new to weightlifting shoes or much more recreational in nature. So if you want a weightlifting shoe for squats and some accessories on a weekly basis, this model is a really strong option to explore, and it has a good price point. So this model is priced at 105. However, they are often marked down at 95. I feel like they've been like 95 for the last few months, so you could definitely cop a pair for less than 100 in most cases. And so for that price point and for the shoe's construction, I do feel like they are a very viable option for somebody who doesn't want to drop a ton of money on weightlifting shoes. When discussing the sizing and fit in the Do-Win weightlifting shoes, I would actually suggest maybe not listening to Rogue's site for this shoe. I feel like for this iteration, the last has changed, and I think going true to size is the better call for most lifters and athletes. And if you have a notably wider foot, especially through the forefoot or the toe box, you're gonna wanna go up probably a half size in this model. If you look at other reviews, a lot of folks have shared similar sentiments, so I don't think I'm totally off in thinking that, because I thought I was crazy when I first put the shoe on and they felt a little bit snugger, but I feel as though the iteration that is out right now does not align with the text on the product page. And so, just for further context, I have a neutral width foot, and going true to size, this model fits pretty good. It is a little bit snug through the toe box than I would prefer. However, compared to other weightlifting shoes, the toe box does run a little bit more neutral, so I do think it will work for a lot of different foot anatomies. All right, so now let's cover the weight, effective heel height, and insole in this model. For my size 10 shoe here, we have a weight of 18.85 ounces. The effective heel height in this model is 0.75 inches, and the shoe does have a removable insole, which I have discussed already in this video. All right, so now let's cover the construction of the Do-Win weightlifting shoes. So we have a leather upper up here in the toe box that extends through the midfoot, and then there are areas back here in the heel that do have some leather overlays. We also have a nylon mesh throughout the midfoot in this model, and then back here on the heel, we do have that leather back here on the tab. Looking at the midfoot construction, we have two straps that cover this model. As you can see, even when you crank these fully tight, you're not gonna have too much foot overhang, so you're not gonna have this strap hanging on the floor if you do have to really crank this model tight. And then looking at the lacing system, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 eyelets that go up on this model. The shoestring is a little bit thicker in nature, so it is kind of fun to try to navigate where to stick this once you pull both straps tight for the first couple of times with this model. I'll typically tuck them under the laces and not have them overlay here on the Velcro, just because that can lose out on some of that Velcro's grip, so I'll stick them under laces when I'm pulling this model tight. Looking at the tongue, we have some Do-Win branding here. We have a mesh tongue. It's a little bit lighter in nature compared to the rest of the shoe. Looking at the sole construction, we have a TPU or plastic midfoot and heel back here, and then we have a full rubber outsole. So as you can see, we have a full rubber texture here. This does extend up on the lateral side in the base of the forefoot and the medial side of the base of the forefoot. Looking at the upper construction itself, on Rogue's site they note that this model has a pretty wide profile. Honestly, I would say it's pretty neutral. It might work for wider feet if you go up a half size, but honestly, I feel like this last construction has changed a little bit, and what I feel like gives this model its wider profile is actually the upper here that does have a little bit of overhang, because you can have a little bit of spillover but still feel secure in the shoe. So it could be a pretty good option for wider feet. However, I do think once again they changed the toe box a little bit in this iteration compared to prior models. Once again, we do have a removable insole in this shoe. I do wish they would rework the insole a little bit, especially when it comes to the material used on the top of the insole. But that pretty much wraps up the gist of the Do-Win model's construction. If you have any additional questions on this shoe, drop a comment down below. All right guys, that wraps up my review of the Do-Win weightlifting shoes. Honestly, Do-Win once again are a great budget-friendly option. If you're new to weightlifting shoes, or if you're much more recreational in nature, definitely look into a pair of these shoes. There are little things that I wish would change with this model. However, I do feel like the consistency with the shoe is one of the best things about it. So it does have a give and take there. If you have any additional questions on this model, drop a comment down below or reach out to me personally, whichever you prefer. And as always guys, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next one.